everyone, welcome to our Live at 5 on Tuesday. And today we're going to be revealing the border that's between, I've got the Duck Goose behind me, and there is a pieced border between the medallion block and the pieced border that I have up there. Plus there's also another plain border that's in between them, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later. So for today, first of all, I'd like to share a couple of things with you. First, one of the things I wanted to make sure that you remember is we are back to having classes here at the shop. And I call them hybrid classes because you can actually take them at home via Zoom at the same time we're having the class here at the shop. So the other day we had a class with one student in Kansas and several here in the shop, and we all had a good time and everybody got a lot done. So just to remind you what we have coming up soon, the V-block lantern class is the one on the left here, and that one is actually this Thursday if we get enough people. We've got some, and so hopefully we'll have a few more sign up before it's time for the class. And the one on the right is called Charmed Hearts, and that one is Saturday. So they are listed on our website, so you can go to our website, get more information. You can buy the class online from our online shopping, or you can call the shop and we can sign you up that way. So be sure and sign up soon so you can make sure you have a seat. Those are not the only classes. Those are just the ones that are happening this week. But we do have a minimum number in order to be able to have the class. So keep that in mind. We have, I do have one class scheduled so far into August, but there will be more posted soon. So you can check out all of our classes on our website. The other thing I wanted to share with you is it's school supply time. This is a great time to buy things that you can use in the quilt room. And I got this out of the trash because I bought a new set of Le Pins. This is a lot of times what I use when I'm writing or using that to draw my two lines on half squares, or using it to make our flying geese. And I just stuck some of them back in here. But these are the pins I like, and I remember use them and draw as lightly as I can. They are permanent, so do keep that in mind if you have a very, very light fabric that you're drawing on. So you want to not go too dark, or you might have a problem. It might show through. So then the other thing I wanted to share with you is some books that we just got in the shop. This one is called Scrap Basket Knockouts, and it's got some really cool quilts made with scraps. And of course, you could use the original pre-cut fat quarters to make all of these scrappy quilts as well. So there's some really fun things from Kim Brackett. There's 12 projects in here. These are brand new in the shop from these are from Martingale. And I'm going to move this picture over here so maybe you can see a little better. Another one is called Quilts from Quarters, made with fat quarters or long quarters. And there's 12 projects in here. This is by Pam and Nikki Lintott maybe. And they do a lot with pre-cuts as well. So there's some fun little things, that a mixture of applique and piecing, some nice little projects in here. That one I thought was a fun little star with kind of a little trick to making that little star. This one, oh, I had one that I marked. Oh, this one I was going to share with you. Notice some familiar shapes in there. There's a square and a square right there. There's a V block. There's a seam right there. And there's another V block. So you can always tuckerize these patterns. Even they will give you their method of construction, but often you can use the tucker tools to make the shapes that you need. All you have to know is what finish size you need. So this one's got a squared right in the middle, 2 V blocks nose to nose, and that's all that's in that quilt. So that's a shape we've used before. This one is called Make It Mini, and they're all just little projects. Some of them are, there was one of them that was like 12 by 15. This one I thought was really cute. It's 10 by 15. It's got embroidered, hand embroidered flowers in it. Isn't that cute? So that is Make It Mini. Some of them are 20 by 20, but many of them are smaller than that. This one is Jingle All the Way. If you like to do wool applique, there's some really fun little things in this with wool applique. There's a neat little mug rug or table topper rug or gift tags. So that is another one. And then another winner from Lori Holt, Scrappiness is Happiness. So there's 32 projects in this book. So any of the books that you see me show, if you want us to reserve a copy of them, call the shop and we will reserve it. Some of them will be on our website, but not necessarily all of them because they just have come in. So if there was one of these that you saw go by that you want to make sure you get a copy, call the shop and we'll put one back for you. So tonight's project, our Duck, Duck, Goose, we're going to be adding a border to go in the position in between our medallion in the center and that pieced block, and there's another plain border there. So what we're going to do tonight is some of the pieces are a review because we are again going to use a shaded 4-patch and we're also going to add a combo unit. So you see there on the left the border that we're going to be adding. That cream colored square in the center is the 12-inch block that we just finished that is hanging on the wall behind me. So I have done pieces and parts of this already so you can see it. Now I have actually left some of them as shaded 4-patch because you could actually use a shaded 4-patch to make that border rather than doing the popped corners. Let me get this where it is in the right place. I'm going to put this back over here because I tend to get that in the way for you where it's hard to see. So you could actually leave shaded 4-patch units, and I'll show you, review again how you do that, or you can put a little pop on the corner, and I've popped off the blue corner and added back a background. And this is what I'm going to be using for mine, and that's what you saw in the picture that I showed a minute ago. I'm doing scrappy corners, but I'm doing a matching big triangle. So that is an option for you, and I've got a whole bunch of them here ready to go. So just as a little bit of a review, you're going to make this wonky 4-patch, and in your instructions, it gives you the dimensions. These are 4-inch finished units, and we have done 4.5-inch finished shaded 4-patch. This is the Duck and Ducklings corner. We've done these in 4.5 and in 3-inch finished. This border is a 4-inch finished. So the dimensions that you need are on your handout. You start out with your square and your rectangle, and you're going to stitch them together. Then you're going to flip this together like this and stitch it. And so I'm going to just real quickly stitch it because I want to show you, remind you of an important step in this process. So we're going to just stitch right down the side, the long side. And remember, if you're assembly line sewing, always feed the same end through at all of your pairs. Makes it a little easier when you go then to do your marking. And I had already done all of my others, so I've just got one pair to sew. And so then you are pressing away from the square each time. So in order to do that, the best way to accomplish that is to fold this in half and snip that, and I snip it a thread or two past your seam line, because now I can take this to my iron and I can make sure that I'm pressing away from my square every time. And that little snip allows that seam to flip there in the center so it lays down nice and flat. So I'm just going to give it a little finger press. Then your next step is to mark your stitching lines in between. And you want to make sure that you are marking right across that intersection where the two seams cross. And you're marking at a 45-degree angle. The easiest way to do this one is to turn this, and I'm going to grab my Tucker trimmer. You have many tools that have a 45-degree angle, like this is the Olfa frosted ruler, and it has a 45-degree line that you can use to put on your seam. I like to use the Tucker trimmer when it fits. When we were doing the 4.5-inch unit, the Tucker trimmer doesn't fit across that because it's not long enough to get all the way across. But if I put the number 3.5-inch dashed line on my seam for this size, it fits just fine because I just need to be able to get from one side over to the other. So I'm going to grab one of my pins and I'm just going to draw a real faint line right there. So that's one of my lines. I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to grab the other stitching line and put my 3.5 line. Just so happens that this is the one that fits. Any of these lines, like if I put this one here, the angle's correct, but it won't go all the way to the corner. So whatever line that you can find, you need one of those angled lines, and it doesn't tell you on here that it's a 45-degree angle, but I'm telling you it is. So that's the easiest way to mark that. Didn't mark quite dark enough right here, so I'm going to do this one again. Get that in the right place. And once I get those lines drawn on, I'm ready to stitch. Then you're going to pair that up with your rectangles. And remember, all of these dimensions are on your handout. We're going to buddy up. That's got a, we won't use that one. I'll have to press that out of there and trim that back to the right size. So we're going to stitch right on that line and you want to get yourself in the habit of sewing off and on to a fabric tag. It just makes life easier. Let's make sure that lays down flat. And then on this, I'm just going to just stitch across the end because this is all in the seam allowance anyway. I'm going to twist this around. We're going to go right across that intersection, and then I'm going to park my needle in my fabric tag. Now you want to grab some kind of a cutting guide that is not your Tucker trimmer because, not your magic wand, because your magic wand isn't wide enough to protect your fingertips. So you can actually trim this where it's exactly 1/4 inch from that seam. I don't worry about that on this particular unit because I'm just going to press this toward my bigger triangle, give it a little finger press, and then I'm ready to press that. All right, so if I'm doing, let's go to the overhead camera so you can just get a little refresher on that. If I'm doing this, I'm going to press toward the bigger triangle. And I had already done that with the ones that I've shown you that are already finished. If you're using the acorn pressing pin, this is when you would need to add it. Just give it a little swipe. I completely missed the seam, so I redid it. Sometimes you can see the solution. Some colors of fabric, you just don't see it for some reason. But it doesn't take a lot to do the work you want it to do. So now at this point, you need to trim this. It's a 4-inch finished unit, so I'm going to trim it to 4.5. So I'm right-handed, so I'm going to put the half circle on the top right corner. I'm looking for the 4.5-inch line, and that's going to line up on my seam. Then the cross line is going to line up right across that point on my square in the corner. I'm going to make 2 cuts. That's going to get rid of that little part, and then I'm going to twist around. And now I'm going to find the 4.5-inch lines. Those are the cleanup lines here and here. Those are going to go on my cut edges. The cross line 4.5 goes here, and the solid lines going across my square, across both points, the corner and the one that matches right here. So until you trim this unit, you cannot go to the next step to make the duck and ducklings. So you want to go ahead and trim those, and then you have to make your decision. Are you going to leave them as a shaded 4-patch to make that border, or are you going to use the corner pop tool and pop off the corner and add back a background triangle so that you end up with the duck and ducklings look? So there are my shaded 4-patch units ready for that pop of color. All right, so now if I'm going to use, let me grab one of these. If I'm going to make the duck and ducklings corner, I have a, and we talked about this last week, I want to pop off the corner of this square. Since this is a 4-inch finished unit, I want that pop of color to come halfway into this block. So that would be 2 inches. That's how I know to use the number 2 line here, because I want that to come 2 inches into that block. So I find the number 2 on the cutaway corners area, and this is not the corner that we used last week, because remember we were doing a different size. So I find the number 2 on all of them and trim away the corner. Let me see if I've got some more down here. I'm going to have a couple of them that I'm going to have to do later, because that one rectangle was not the right size, or it was the right size, it just had a big fold in it. So I've got to fix that and trim it before I can use it. So I'm just lining up the number 2 line on the cutaway corners area of my tool, and I'm just going to stack them up, because I'm going to do that with all of mine. I think I'll just do it with 4 right now, and then I'll do the others later, because I want to be able to have time to show you a review of the combo units. So let's go back to the sewing area, and I'll remind you of what you're going to do to add back that corner that we've popped off. So here is the area that I want to replace right there. And I've got some squares. All of the dimensions are on your paperwork. Let me get this back where you can see it. I have some squares of my background fabric, and I've cut them in half. So I have triangles. These are oversized that I can add back to fill in that space. Now the shaded 4-patch unit that I popped off that corner is the size I want. It's not going to get trimmed again, so I want to make sure that I put that on top where I can see it, and then line up the edge of my triangle with the edge of my popped off corner. So we're ready to stitch that, and here's where I'm going to start. Now theoretically it'll end up coming across right at the tip of that corner of my blue square. If it doesn't come exactly, you might need to check what you trimmed, because it may not be exactly right. But if I'm stitching with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, it should come right to that corner of my blue square. And I'm going to do that again with all of my shaded 4-patch units that I've popped off the corner. And I'm going to line that up and just stitch from one to the other. I'm going to do that with 4 of them so you can see what comes next. So The dimensions for this are for a 4-inch finished unit. Get another one. And I just center that triangle on the back. Remember, it's oversized. It's going to get trimmed. So I don't fuss with it too much, but I do try to make sure that I have about an equal amount of the replacement triangle sticking out on both sides of that colored corner that I've popped off the side of the square. Because it's going to give you just enough to trim away to make that a precise unit. So this is the corner pop instructions. You can do a pop of color on any corner. It can be on a square, it can be on a pieced square, it could be on a rectangle, but this is the process for using the corner pop tool. So I've got all of my pieces, so we're going to go back over to the overhead camera so you can see what we're going to do next. So I have my pieces. Let me make sure my iron's hot again. And I'm going to just give it a quick little finger press, and that is the Duck and Ducklings unit. Remember, the Duck and Ducklings had 4 of these with a little cross inside sashing on each block. But we've just kind of got a deconstructed duckling block. And I'm just giving it a little finger press. Now would be the time you would add just a bit of the acorn pressing pin. And my iron is the cordless iron, so it starts cooling off just as soon as I take it off the base. So it's not too hot to let it sit there for a minute. And you let the iron do the work. I'm not fiddling with it and sawing with it. Now I'm ready to trim this to the right size. So these areas are your cutaway corners where you cut away the part you don't need. Part of it is 1/2 and whole inch measurements. Part of it is 3/4 and 1/4 inch measurements. And then this area is what you use for trimming down. So once I get that replacement triangle added, I'm going to use the same number that I used to cut away the corner. I use the number 2. I'm going to line that up. So I'm looking for several things. First of all, I'm looking for the number 2 to put here. I also notice this is a 4-inch unit, so a 4-inch finished unit. So right across the center should be the number 4 line. And then this dash line and this dash line should hug right on those cut edges. I'm really only wanting to clear away just right what's on the outside of that replacement triangle. I should not have, let me put this back so you can see, I really shouldn't have anything to trim away here and here, just up here on the replacement triangle. So once I get the number 2 line in place, check the number 4 line, check these dash lines. I wiggled it with my thumb, so let me put it back. And I'm going to go up and over. And that's how you make the Duck and Ducklings unit using the shaded 4-patch and the corner pop tool. So we're going to be doing all 12 of our units. I think it's 12. I'm sure it's 12. No, that's not right. 3. No, it's 12. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we have some of our units made. Now, I want to show you some, no, I don't want to show you the options yet. I want to review with you how to make the combo unit. So we'll come back to that in just a minute. I just about got ahead of myself. So on the shaded 4-patch units, remember I said you could actually use those for this border. Now I left just shaded 4-patch units on this border, and I put them in 4 different arrangements, just so you could see how many options you have. So all of the red ones are shaded 4-patch units where I would have used a square of red, a rectangle or rectangles of cream, and then my big rectangle would have been gold. The little triangles you see in the middle, those are all part of the combo unit that we're going to review. So you do have the option of doing shaded 4-patch, not using the corner pop to pop off the corners, and making a really attractive border that way. So let's talk about your Tucker trimmer instructions on the chart. To do a combo unit, you're basically going to do the top row and the second row, and then you're going to trim to size. So you start out with 2 squares face to face. You draw your 2 lines using the Quilter's Magic Wand. Then you're going to stitch and press and cut them apart. Then you're going to add a solid square. You're going to draw 2 lines again, and then you're going to stitch your 2 lines, and you'll end up with combo units, and then you'll stitch and press. That's actually what we're making. But I would just prefer that my combo units all be oriented the same way. So I'm going to remind you of that step. There is a technique sheet called non-mirror combo units. Let me go back to a picture of the combo unit just to remind you. The combo unit is there with the little black triangle, a little gold triangle, and then a bigger gold triangle. But they're all oriented the same way. That's not a terribly difficult thing to do with this technique called non-mirror combos, and that's what we're going to do. So I have my squares already cut, and I want my triangle on this to all be black and then gold for my other color. So I have 3 squares that are gold and 1 square that is black, and that's going to be my combo units. So you're going to buddy up the black with one of the golds. So that's how we're going to start. And you can actually do your line drawing before you align your 2 squares. I just put it there, but you don't have to have them aligned when you do your drawing. So you're going to grab your Quilter's Magic Wand, and your small one, the one that I talk about where I've cut it in half, is not long enough. So you're going to need your longer Quilter's Magic Wand to get all the way across. And I'm going to put the etched line corner to corner, and then I'm going to draw my line and draw a line on both sides. And so I've got my 2 lines. On this one, let me make it a little bit darker because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. When I'm doing my line drawing for whatever, if it's half squares, combo units, quarter squares, or flying geese, I draw as lightly as I can and still be able to see. So because I want to do the non-mirror combo technique, I have to draw lines going both directions where they form a double X, okay? So on this, I'm going to stitch on the right leg till I get to the center, cross over, and stitch on the left leg across. So let me do that so you can see how that looks. If you're just making a bunch and it doesn't matter that they are all oriented the same, then the technique is just exactly what's on the instruction sheet that comes with your tool. So I'm going to sew on the right line till I get to the crisscross, and then I'm going to go across and then sew on the left leg, the left line. And then I'm going to find my fabric tag. I've lost it. There it is. I had 2, so I knew it had to be close by. And I'm going to park my needle. If you're doing a bunch of these, of course, you just assembly line sew and go to the next pair of squares. I'm going to do exactly the same thing here. And I've got 2 lines, but I know which one I'm supposed to be following. I did that when I tried to make it darker so you could see them. I'm going to go across and match up, and then sew on the left line. The dimensions for the size you need are in your paperwork. This is a 4-inch finished unit. It has to match the other one, so it's a 4-inch finished unit. So now I have a line. Let me see if you can see that better. Not really. You're going to sew on the right, cross over, sew on the left, and do the same thing. Right, cross over, and sew on the left. Then you're going to grab one of your cutting tools, rulers that you can guide against. Whoops. Cut on the fabric, not the tool. And you're going to actually cut both directions. Now I have 4 pieces that look like this, and I think I'm going to press toward the black. Just give it a little finger press and do that with all 4 of them. Now if you're doing a bunch of these, you would finger press them first and then take them all to the ironing surface and give them a quick little press with your iron. So I'm just going to turn around and do that real quick so I can make sure that they've all are pressed down. And now I'm going to grab those 2 other squares that were my gold squares. Now normally you would have 2 of these, or a solid square and then a half square. But because I'm doing the non-mirror combo technique, I've got 2 triangles that are pieced, and I'm going to put those right together, and that's what it should look like. And I'm going to stitch on this side, then I'm going to stitch on this side. I find it easiest to give this a little help and pin this triangle into place. You can draw your line on it if you feel a need to, but because I've cut that apart, I've actually got an edge to follow. So I'm going to use the presser foot on my machine plus the line that's on my lighter fabric to guide from. So I'm going to do this on both pieces. So let me grab my other square and flip this over. Is everybody understanding this? Do I have questions? No questions? Okay, so there is a technique sheet called non-mirror combo units. If you don't have it, I recommend getting it. We actually keep in stock all of the technique sheets and all of the tools from Studio 180 Design. And this is just a really cool trick for making a bunch of combo units that are all the same direction. Otherwise, you'd end up with some of your triangles facing the opposite direction. Which on a lot of projects that really wouldn't matter, but on most projects I find I tend to like them to be on the same side. So I'm just going to take out my pins as I go. If you sew over a pin, and sometimes I do, make sure you slow down so that you can make sure that your needle doesn't jam on that pin. And I did that on purpose just so you could see. Occasionally I do sew over a pin, but if you go flying across there and hit a pin, you could knock your machine out of time, and then it has to have a visit to the machine doctor. And so I find it a lot of times easier just to take the pins out as I go. And I have my pin cushion right beside me, so I just poke it over there as I'm going. So then I'm going to grab my fabric tag and sew off of my units and turn it around. I could actually sew across the end as well. We're going to stitch across here. A combo unit is a fun little unit, and there's a lot of projects that it's an appropriate addition to making that unit. You can put them in corners of blocks. You can actually use them to make a little pinwheel. And now when we get to the other side, we're going to park our needle. And we're ready to go to the ironing surface and the trimming surface. So we're going to go to the overhead camera so you can see what comes next. So I'm ready to cut between the lines where I've stitched. So there's my combo units because of the technique I did at the beginning. They're all oriented the same direction, which is what I wanted. And I'm just going to cut down between my 2 rows of stitching. So there's one set. Make sure you cut the right direction, because if you cut across this way, you're going to be sewing again. So you want to cut between that double row of stitching that you just added. And there is my set of 4 combo units. So there's one. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a finger press and set the iron on it. While it's heating up that unit, I'll get the next one ready. And I just keep repeating that till I get all 4 of them pressed. Now there are lots of really kind of fun projects you can make with this combo unit. It's a very common unit that you see. It's a shape that you see a lot. So this would be the time to grab your acorn pressing pin, and I did not do the cross seam. I just gave it a quick little press and went to the next step. So I'm just going to do both of them while I'm doing this. Give the iron time to set that nice and sharp creases. Give that time to work. And I tend to just stack up my units like this so that they get a little extra time under the iron as I'm going from unit to unit. I find that that gives me really good results. So now I'm ready to trim this, and guess what size I'm going to do? This is a 4-inch finished unit, so I want it to be a 4.5-inch square. I'm looking for the line that says 4.5 and the line, the solid bold line. So the half circle is going on the top right corner, and that 4.5 line is going on my seam where it crosses over the bold line. I know that goes right on that center point, and I just twist until I get my lines in place. I don't know if you can see this line right there, but I want that right on that triangle. With that being a black triangle, it's kind of hard to see on the camera, but I can see it in person. So there's 2 sides, turn, and now I'm going to put the 4.5-inch line on the edges, and that same crisscross where the 2 lines intersect goes right on the center, and there's my perfectly trimmed combo unit. And it's going to match up with either my shaded 4 patch if I decide to leave that unit, or my Duck and Ducklings unit. So those are the 2 units, the combo unit and either the Duck and Ducklings unit or the shaded 4 patch. Those are the 2 units that you need for this pieced border. Now I want to show you some options if you when you are deciding what colors you're going to use and how you're going to arrange them. So first of all, this was options for if you're going to use shaded 4 patch. But also, you can use like this one where I have all of my Duck and Ducklings the same color. Now, some of my borders I am going to use the same color on all of the units, but this one, mine is going to be scrappy. So this is more like what mine's going to look like. My Duck and Duckling small triangle is going to be scrappy, but my big triangle is going to be gold, and it's going to match the gold that's in my shaded 4-patch. So here's one option for arrangement. But what if I turn those combo units around and put them at the outside edge? Then this is what it would look like. I'm going to make them small so you can see them together. And there's that combo units. I knew I had one. Let me put these 3 units side, or there's 4 of them. There's the shaded 4-patch with different combinations of corners, so you can see how you could arrange them. You could also do that same arrangement with your Duck and Ducklings. Here's one with the combo unit triangle on the inside. This one is with the combo unit triangle on the outside. So there's 4 options for those same units. You can either do the shaded 4-patch and stop there, or you can pop off the corners and do a Duck and Ducklings, and then you have several options for how you arrange those pieces. So all of those pictures will be on your handout that you can go to the file and download later. So that'll get you started, and there's also a place on that handout that tells you what size that next inner border needs to be, and what's going to go on the outside of what you see up here. Because on this, there'll be the pieced border here, then another plain border, and then on the outside, another plain border. And then next week, we'll be working on another pieced border. So, any questions I need to answer? Make sure you let us know if you want to join us for one of our classes this week, and also if there is one of the books that I showed that you want us to reserve for you, call soon so we can make sure you get the copy you want and that you're first in line, because we can always order more. So until next week, happy sewing. We'll see you live at 5 next week. Bye-bye.